And welcome everyone to Sports Talk Line, where we talk sports 24/7, 365. And on today's episode of Battle for the Big East, we'll be with Jaden Daly, giving a preview for this upcoming season. Jaden, how are you today?
I'm doing good, Tom. Thank you so much for having me on. You guys do some great work over there.
Thank you. I greatly appreciate it, especially those fans of the Big East. I feel like we are like the redheaded stepchild of college athletics, where everyone tries to think we're dead, but lo and behold, we're still standing in front of you like a zombie apocalypse, I guess. But the first question going into it, too, one of the biggest changes that impacted college basketball is a new transfer rule where players can come in and they don't have to sit out a year. They can just come in, transfer, and play right away. Now, when we look at the Big East, who are some of the biggest transfers that are coming in this season to the Big East?
You know, you got a few of them, and that's going to be the reality of college basketball moving forward, not necessarily just the Big East, but everywhere, where you're going to have coaches hitting the transfer portal and recruiting depth and essentially new teams. You're going to see that a lot. Xavier jumped out at me a lot with Jack Nunge, the transfer from Iowa, who didn't really play much because he was trapped behind Luka Garza under Fran McCaffrey. But when you look at what he brings to a Xavier front court that already includes Zach Freemantle and Paul Scruggs leading the charge in the backcourt, Travis Steele has to like what he sees from Nunge. I think he'll make a big difference right away. I feel the same way about Al Durham at Providence, the Indiana transfer, who will add some instant credibility to Ed Cooley's backcourt, which he needs in the light of David Duke having turned pro. So the Friars are going to have a new look in their backcourt. And as far as the locals, we're based here in New York. St. John's brings in Aaron Wheeler, the transfer from Purdue. Montez Mathis, I think, will have a little bit more of a role than what he was used to at Rutgers. Might see a little more from him offensively, but defensively, he's tailor-made for the system that Mike Anderson runs. And Seton Hall brought in 3 transfers as well. And you're going to see 2 of them make an impact right away in the backcourt. In Jameer Harris, the transfer from American, who averaged 20 points a game in the Patriot League, and also in Kadari Richmond from Syracuse. You add those 2 to Alexis Yetna from South Florida, who I'm not sure if you remember what Herb Pope did for the Pirates a decade ago, but I looked at Alexis Yetna, and I think he's going to have a Herb Pope-like impact for Kevin Willard. That's just a small sample size of what we're looking at, and I forgot about Tyler Kolek at Marquette. This kid won Atlantic 10 Rookie of the Year honors last season at George Mason, and he's playing for a coach in Shaka Smart who knows how to get his players and get the best out of them week in and week out. You're going to look at Kolek and you're going to see something similar to how Troy Daniels was at VCU, a sharpshooter who could really impact the game.
Yes. Now, we kind of talked about the transfers coming in, and it was very fluid, to say the least. I think that Seton Hall St. John's game is going to be a rock fight at Madison Square Garden. We'll see how many times that occurs, especially with the local recruiting rivalry heating up. But we'll definitely talk about Seton Hall a little later on. But it's also, too, which players that are returning to the Big East do you see elevating their profile? I think last year the best example was Julian Champagnie. A lot of people thought he would be good. He exploded. A lot of people think he's going to keep that upward trajectory into a first-round NBA draft pick. We'll see what happens. Which player do you see coming in this year could have that potential explosion like Champagnie had last year?
Well, you said Champagnie, and I'll say his teammate, Posh Alexander. I think he is a professional player waiting to happen. You look at what he did last season and now going into his sophomore year. He reminds me a lot, as a North Carolina fan, of Ty Lawson his first couple of years in terms of the impact that he provides offensively and defensively. The biggest drawback with Posh is he's going to have to improve his shooting, particularly on the perimeter, to supplement his defensive game and his take charge point guard instincts. He can attack, he can slash. He's just got to get better with his shot, though I think he can do it, honestly. You mentioned Champagnie and Jared Rhoden across the river at Seton Hall as well. The 2 of them should be first-team All-Big East players, but if you're looking for one in particular that's going to take the next step and be an elite player, I like Posh Alexander a lot.
Yeah, and also when you look at Posh Alexander's game, a lot of players get noticed for their scoring at the college level. He's getting noticed for his defense, so he could be that guy that comes in, aggravates the point guard, and also the last person to win Big East Freshman of the Year and also Defensive Player of the Year was this guy by the name of Allen Iverson. I think he did okay. I think he did okay, but just don't ask him about practice. That's the one thing.
Allen Iverson, who is he?
Yes, to say the least. Probably pound for pound, the best basketball player in the history of the game. But since we're speaking of upward trends, we talked about players that have an upward trend. What programs do you see have an upward trend going forward in this season?
I like St. John's a lot, just the culture that Mike Anderson has instilled and the way he's constructed his rosters in just 2.5 years. The knock on him when he got the job at St. John's was that he may not be able to recruit New York and convince elite local talent to stay home. He's picked up 6 commitments and/or signings since he replaced Chris Mullin, who, for all his NBA pedigree, really didn't move the needle much in recruiting outside of Shamari Pons. You look at what Mike Anderson's done with Champagny, with Alexander, with Dylan Adai-Wusu, who's probably one of the most unsung players in a rotation in the Big East, particularly off the bench. I like UConn a lot, but I want to see how the Huskies do without James Bouknight. When he was injured, they struggled to score offensively. That's going to be the biggest issue for Dan Hurley's team this season. Butler is young, and Butler has upside. If you're looking for a team, outside the metropolitan area, I like what Laval Jordan has done with the Bulldogs, and that's a team that can really surprise some people this year and next year as well if they can get the core of the team to come back.
Yeah, I definitely think a lot of people, Butler started playing a lot better towards the end of the season. You have the Hinkle magic, to say the least.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely think Butler, they were pretty much returning their whole roster. And they got a unique style. I think the one weakness with Butler, they need to find multiple ways to win games because it seems like, if you score over 70, Butler can't top that. Similar to UConn, too. So I definitely think UConn has a lot of pro talent on that team if they can score, and the same thing goes for Butler. But now we're kind of going to flip the script a little bit because we talked about the upward trend. Now, which program do you see could be on the downward trend in the Big East?
Should we say DePaul has been on a downward trend for the last couple of years?
They are the downward trend. That's literally low-hanging fruit. I mean, DePaul was one of the programs that always had talent. Some years they would have talent. They just could not close out games. They would find ways to lose. Anyone besides DePaul.
I think this season will probably be a combination of Creighton and Marquette because they're both in reloading years, so to speak. They're retooling. Greg McDermott has to look to life without Marcus Zagorowski, but Ryan Nembhard, the freshman point guard, should be one of the Rookie of the Year contenders. I'd like to see what Ryan Kalkbrenner can do with an increased role down low. With Damian Jefferson gone, it's really his time to shine in the Blue Jay front court. And also Marquette, with just everybody having left. Dawson Garcia transferred to North Carolina. DJ Carton is gone. You look at the roster now, and Shaka Smart is essentially starting from scratch with this team. So it'll be a transitional year. If you look at two teams that are usually near the top of the Big East standings, I think Creighton and Marquette are going to have to take a few months to really figure out what they have. This season may be an aberration, but probably not what you're used to if you're a fan of either of those programs.
I do anticipate – I feel like if you want to get Creighton, this upcoming season's the season because they got a strong freshman class coming in now. They have a strong recruiting class already lined up for 2022 to come in. Mm-hmm. And I really thought, if you asked me around March Madness when those comments came out with Doug McDermott, a lot of the assistant coaches left, a lot of players left, I thought Creighton was in trouble. But it looks like with the recruitment coming in, I feel confident with Creighton. One program that I think you kind of haven't really mentioned, I'm going to go with Georgetown. A lot of people remember the Cinderella run Georgetown had. And I really think Georgetown was up and down all season. They got a lot of good matchups. You got to give – I don't think they beat Villanova without Colin Gillespie. They did get those wins, though. They didn't make it to the Big East. They took a lump in the NCAA tournament, and then Qudus Wahab decides to transfer out very quickly. I thought if he was coming back, that says something. Even though Georgetown does have a good freshman class coming in, Aminu Muhammad is the highlight guy. I feel like he's going to be a one-and-done guy. And
interesting.
I just think Georgetown is in there too. And part of me is wondering about Providence too. I think you got to look. I think if there wasn't that fifth year of exemption, a lot more eyes would be on Ed Cooley because they underachieved last year. And I think Providence is something to keep an eye on.
That's a fair assessment. And with Nate Watson getting the extra year, that's a shot in the arm for the Friars. I wouldn't say Ed Cooley would be on the hot seat. I think that job is his as long as he wants it, being that he's a hometown guy and he's already lifted the program back to where it was in the 90s under Pete Gillen before, and even under Tim Welsh in the 2000s when Ryan Gomes was there before the program took a little bit of a hit. But other than that, I think Ed Cooley has significant job security. I wouldn't be worried about him. But you raised a good point on Providence, Tom.
Yeah, so that's something too. I mean, he has job security for now, but 3 or 4 bad seasons, we'll see though. But since we're talking about coaches, one of the more interesting storylines to come out for Big East basketball involves Myles Powell. He was someone who came into Seton Hall. He developed into an All-American caliber player, scored over 2,000 points. And he decided to sue his coach and former university that he played for this recently, which is something that's, eye-opening to say the least. Do you think there has been any ramifications on the Seton Hall program with this Myles Powell lawsuit? Because no one's going to be able to comment on it because they're being sued. But do you see any ramifications for this?
Not at all. Not at all. And I can tell you that Seton Hall has already moved very quickly to get the lawsuit dismissed. So Kevin Willard and company are just rolling on as if it almost never happened. It's unfortunate for Myles Powell if he was playing injured, but I don't think that it's going to have any long-term adverse effect on the program. You already see at Seton Hall is hit the ground running, recruiting, and in the transfer portal, just not missing a beat. The beat rolls on in South Orange. I don't think it's going to be much of an issue, and it was already swept under the rug almost as fast as it came out.
Yeah, I think, too, when you looked at Myles Powell, he was a great college player, but similar to, I guess you can put him in the Shamari Pons category where he was a great scorer in college, but he wasn't big enough for the position to play in the NBA. So
I'll throw in, sorry to cut you off, I'll throw in, I think if not for COVID, he would have been a late second-round draft pick. Remember, there was no draft combine proper, so Powell never really got a chance to show his skills off. I think the fact that the combine was canceled really hurt him. If not for COVID, I think he would have been a draft pick.
Yeah, I also think too, combo guard is the worst position assignment to have in college basketball. But you know what? Don't make that mistake. Hit that like and subscribe button. Follow Sports Talk Line on YouTube so you can keep on getting all these episodes. Jaden, before we leave, can you tell everyone where we can find you on social media?
Absolutely, Tom. On Twitter at Daily Dose of Hoops. You'll see all the links to everything on my site from there. Still in the middle of off-season MAC previews. We'll get into the Big East probably in October before Media Day on the 19th, and hopefully I'll get to see you at the Garden.
Yes. All right. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and remember to listen like you play with intensity.